Bruce, before the season, you had mentioned that it's a copycat league, and a lot of the teams will try and emulate what you guys did last year. When you look back at this series against Dallas, was it a matter of maybe they did a lot of the things that you guys did well last year to kind of get through for them?
No, listen, I think they played their own style. There's certain things you take. I'm not going to go through every team. I think they understand they got to take away the rush game. I think, Pete's been coaching a long time. He's had success. Certain parts of the game, I know that you try to take away from the other team because sometimes it's your top players get confidence from that, right? It's no different than us with Dallas. We want to take away some of their rush game. D-zone coverage, minimize time and space, sustain pressure. I think there's a lot of different things you do, and they played well defensively, so did we. And the numbers back all that up. Keep going back to the one game 3 skewed some of the numbers early on, and other than that, they're very, very even. And I think they saw a team that got to their offensive game last year quickly, and when we did, we got on a roll. He coached some of these guys. He knows how the confidence goes and the quick strike. We never got that going. So give them credit for doing that. And I felt, other than, like I said, the burps we had in game 3, we did a pretty good job of taking that away too, so the skill guys don't get feeling really good about themselves. And that's one of the things we did really well last year. We found a way to get to that. And I thought we did in 6 and 7 a little more. I really did. I thought we were turning the corner. We didn't finish some plays in game 7, and I think if we would have got a little more of that confidence going forward. Sometimes you need a round to get going, especially in our situation. We didn't have a lot of time to get our team up and running that was going to play in the playoffs. So credit to them for doing that. The other adjustments, I thought they got in and out of their end in a hurry a little more, just with getting into foot races, not even puck possession, getting out, because our forecheck, I think, did some damage against them last year and the first game. So adjustment there, but that takes away from your rush game too. Sometimes you're just throwing the puck out and hoping you win a race, right? You might get an individual chance. So there's a give and take in every part of the game, and at the end of the day, they're one goal better than us. So give them credit for parts of the game they did well.
I know it's still fresh, but just the way the season ended, your conversations with players since, is there a lesson that you hope to take from this season? Is there some, I guess, the biggest takeaway from the conversations you've had?
Well, there's a lot of the same theme, that it was a hard series to find time and space. So I don't know if we're going to take away that for our whole season. That is up to us to find ways to create more time and space and the players to do it. But every year when you lose, people forget there's another team out there that's pretty good that you play, right? And they do things well. And it's like last year when Edmonton, whatever, had their autopsy after, so well, you got to give some credit goes to the opposition too, right? And then you got to find internally what you can do better. So I would say that would be our job this summer. Okay, next year, let's make sure we find ways to be better in areas that we weren't good enough in. And I think most teams go through that, and we're going to be no different. So I think the common message was, a lot of guys, I wish we had our lineup together and played a little bit more to build some chemistry. So the injuries played a part in that, but that's not an excuse. It isn't. You can't use it, but it was reality was we didn't have a lot of time to build some of that chemistry. So maybe your offense does come because you've got chemistry, right? So that I think worked against us late in the year, and there was a common theme about that. I think our players all believe too that we had a great group of guys that could do it again. Just couldn't quite get together long enough to have the opportunity to do it, and maybe this game would have been a springboard going forward to give us some of that, because we actually needed to play more games together. So the fact that the series went long could have been beneficial towards us if we had have advanced, because we got more games together and more time for Stoney and Hurdle to build their game and find out where does Anthony fit, and when we lost Haig, who the best pairs and stuff, like get Hilly going again because he only played the last 3. So there was a lot of that, and that came up in conversation.
Yeah, Bruce, to that point, as you try to look ahead to next year, I want to specifically ask you about Hurdle. Where will he best fit in your mind after you played him up and down the lineup at both center wing, on the power play, on the penalty kill? What did you see in this short sample size that you got out of him
Well, the
where you
fir-
think he best fits?
The first thing is automatically net front power play, right? He helps us there in the circle. So you can see the difference. You got to count for him. Until we have a roster, it's hard to say he'll be playing center with this player or that player or winger, right? I anticipate he'll play center because that's more his natural position, and we would like to use him there. But let's see what our roster looks like, come once we sort out who's staying, who's not, cap situation, free agency, draft, all those things that can impact your roster. I see him being a down low type of center, puck possession guy, so we need to surround him with complementary guys. They can certainly play on the rush, but that's a little more Jack's game and Carly's. So we want to build a line that complements his skill. I think we have those guys in the room, but to tell you right now, I don't think that would be accurate to say he's going to play center with this guy in his right wing and his left wing. I don't think we're there yet. We're just not. But those are the traits I saw in his game. And that's how I anticipate he'll be deployed next year.
Hi, Bruce. Puck management was one of the key areas that you mentioned, both in wins and losses. Like
The what, sorry?
Puck management.
Puck management, yeah, sorry.
Just overall, was there something different about the chemistry in terms of that? Does that chemistry kind of impact that puck management and managing the puck, especially in the neutral zone?
Yes, puck support usually is directly correlated with puck management. Your better support is, the better you're going to manage it. Some of it's individual, just decision making. That's certainly an area that we weren't good enough in some of the games. You saw it in Game 3. Support comes into it a lot. Some of that is chemistry. Some of that is reinforcing those things. Reading off one another is chemistry, right? So, but I think it was less about chemistry and more about some of the decisions we made with it. And then some of the forecheck pressure by Dallas, their quickness in that area that forced us into mistakes. They do get credit for creating some of those decisions we made that didn't work out. So those are the three areas to me that we needed to be better. I'd say that was our biggest most area that we'd need to improve on if we expected to win that series was, manage the puck better, and how can we do that? And I kind of described those three things, and that's where I look back and say I won't say lost the series, but could have really impacted and won it.
Bruce, this is your first go-around of being a defending champ. I'm wondering how big of a challenge was this with the injuries, to get through the regular season and just to get back to the playoffs with an opportunity to try and repeat?
Well, it wasn't automatic we'd get back to the playoffs, first of all. You know that going in. We figured our expectations were much higher than that, but it's not automatic. So we had to work, probably go harder than we should have or needed to get back in. We had to expend more energy down the stretch to do that than we would have liked. So that's one thing for sure where maybe we could have saved a little stress physically and mentally on us. I don't think there was any doubt in the room we weren't going to get there, but we had to push hard. And some of that was injury related, some of that was play related. So that's a part that was tough. The defending champs, all the guys I talked to that were in that position all said they were difficult seasons after. Barbie in St. Louis, Stevie in Washington, Marty to a certain extent in LA. So we knew that going in, that there's a target on your back every night for different reasons from teams throughout the league, and just the mental and physical lack of recovery time from the summer. That's natural when you win. So there was a little bit of that going in, we knew. The year started well, so we thought maybe we were going to get through that part of it. And then I think that the physical part kicked in where the injuries came. So now you got the mental battle of, fighting through those January games. And, one of the guys specifically said, you're a Tuesday night in Columbus, say, and they're coming after you because you're the defending champs, and it's just a mental grind of those games. Now, we're pros. We're paid to produce every night and play. But there is some of that's legit. So that's how I'd answer that. And then once you get to the playoffs, well, then that's kind of the bone for having the regular season, right? And unfortunately, I think we were ready to go in the playoffs in terms of, hey, now's the fun part. This is what you play all year for. And it showed in the first two games. I liked our game. We're defending well, checking the right way, opportunistic. But the physical part takes its toll too from the year then when it starts to ramp up another level, and Dallas did a good job with that. And so did we. We went 7 games, and like I said, I think a little bit of puck luck and, on Marsh and Jack, I'll use them specifically, and they get it on their goal that goes in off our D, and that's it. So the margins were slimmer than we would have liked. I guess that's, if we're looking back, we should have allowed the margins to be larger for us to overcome some of that. How do you do that? You win one of those 2 games at home, right? And maybe gives you a little bit of room. So you can look at that area too, Gauche, where game 4 we should have had much more urgency to put that one away, to sort of say, okay, now we have a command of the series. Them getting that game, I think, was a big mental hurdle for them to get it back to even. So I look at that game too as one where, and don't forget, one went in off Logan's head from the corner, another one went in off Delandry from the front of the net off his elbow. So there's a little bit of the hockey god sort of, like getting your break, and you got to create your own breaks. There's no doubt about that, but there's a little bit of that went into this series where, and maybe if I look back, we got them last year, right? Maybe there's a team sitting here like what I'm doing now after a round saying, well, if we had got the puck luck, we would have beat the Knights. So there's some of that goes into it too.
Coach, sorry, I'm over here. What are you going to miss most about this year's group? And I know it's fresh, but what are you most proud of when you look back at this year?
Well, I'm proud of the way we competed. I don't like the end result. No one does. We expected more out of ourselves. But it wasn't for lack of effort. It was a little bit of lack of cohesion down the stretch where I think could have helped us against a really good team. That's where we ended up in the regular season. I think Mark Stone said if we had maybe it got a different seed, it might have been a little bit easier round. I don't know, because I think there's all good teams in the playoffs, but maybe. We happen to get the number 1 seed, so there's some of that. What do I remember most? Raising of the banner on opening night. I'll never forget that. It was kind of that final, a little bit of the, there's the ring ceremony, the raising of the banner, some of that final piece of what we did the year before that you're never going to forget for the rest of your life, because that's what you play for. So I'll go back all the way to then. But I would say it's the group. It's a terrific group of guys. They would tell you that to a man. They love each other. They play for each other. And as a coach, you don't get that everywhere. You want that. So I'm appreciative of that, and the fact that they worked hard for one another, bought into what we're trying to do. So as a coach, nothing more you can ask for. As I said, we're not happy with the end result. We'll work hard this summer to get it right next year, where we can get to the end result we want. And you're going to miss the guys that are gone, because no team stays the same from year to year. And no matter what happens, and I don't even know how it's going to look, that goes upstairs, you're going to miss whoever it is that's not in that room that you won with. That's just a reality of it.
To that point, a lot of questions today have been about Jonathan Marchessault and his status. You've talked about your relationship with him last year to this year. What about him kind of makes him who he is on this team?
Well, his competitiveness, his resiliency throughout his career, even before he got here. I love coaching Jonathan Marchessault. I think the progression we've made might be one of the best ones I've ever enjoyed as a coach, in terms of how we started to where we ended up. Started like with how we prepare for games. How do we practice? What do I need out of you? 200-foot player. What does he need? The back and forth. We're both emotional. And then he wins the Stanley Cup. He wins the Conn Smythe. He has a career year. So for me, those are all rewarding things for a coach to see a player go through. And you feel like you've done your small part as a coach when that happens. And I enjoy my relationship with him, talking honestly and openly. I love his energy around the room. He's had great years as a Golden Knight. Can't say enough good things about him. So, as a coach, you hope you can keep everybody together, him included. And that's, between his party and Krim to try to get something done. I know the situation he's in. We've got 4 or 5 of those guys. So, but that's my experience from day one till now. Love coaching the guy. Terrific guy for the room. And you see a relationship develop like that. It's nice. I've had it with other players where it comes a little closer to than some other guys that you end up interacting with more for whatever reason. So that's how it went with Marshy. We'll see where it leads.
When you look towards last year, you guys had a number of players that came in. You had Mark Stone out. There were a number of other guys that were out. Carrier missed a portion of time, and that kind of came together really quickly. Then this year, it's similar. Like new players coming in, Mark Stone out, didn't come together as quickly. Like what can you learn between the difference that can maybe help you next year?
Well, I think trying to find maybe the perfect fit. Maybe you got to accept it's not perfect, but you're going to go with it anyway, right? Like sometimes just put Hurdle somewhere and live with it and don't change it yet. Okay, you're trying to get him going. And I think last year the difference was Mark Stone got up to speed so quickly. I think, listen, I think we were all surprised, right? We were hoping and fingers crossed he's going to miss time, and all of a sudden game 2 he's found it, and we're right back to sort of where we were. And Barbie went in at the deadline right away. He went right in with Jack and Marsh and basically played there. So there wasn't as much, and going into the playoffs, LB was the healthiest goalie, him and Quickie, and he was there and playing. So there was a little bit of, that was an easier decision. This year we had a Stanley Cup champion that maybe wasn't on his game, and Tomer's playing a little better. So there's a little more that went into it this year in terms of where the decision making to be automatic. That's what I'll say, and that's my job, to get it right. So this year we get Hurdle at the deadline, but he doesn't play, till so, whereas Hannafin did. So we fit him in right away, I thought, much cleaner because he played more games. So I think it's just natural, and that's nobody's fault. That's just the way it worked out. And I would have loved to have been able to say I got it right away and got everyone in the right spots. It didn't work out that way. We saw that. Yet we're still winning games. We just didn't feel like we had our offense up to where it needed to be. You can't focus on that and lose your checking game either, but we knew we had to be better offensively, so that's why a little bit of the tinkering. That's what I felt. If we wanted to keep getting better, and I've said that, your game needs to grow from game 1 to game 7. I just believe that, so I felt even though we won, we can grow our game. Whether that was right or not, in hindsight, we didn't win, so that's what I'll learn, that sometimes maybe you got to accept where it is and hope it's good enough. But I don't like to hope. I like to have a bit more of a concrete plan, and that's what I did.
You mentioned the uncertainty of what next year's roster might look like, but what did you learn over the course of the year on the guys that could be pushing from Henderson, the guys that could be pushing for jobs next year?
Well, go ahead. You tell me which guys, and I'll give you whatever.
Korzak, Cormier, possibly Paul, maybe more consistent role. Pavel, more games next year. Those guys.
Pav Dorofeyev?
Yeah.
Thought he had a great year. Great growth, which is what you want to see. Developed his scoring touch, the confidence to do that. You need some younger guys to come into your roster, so I like where Pav was. I think the deal, when you make a deal for Mantha and Hurdle, they're just going to push some of those guys out. It happened a bit to Amadio. Pav got a taste of playoff hockey, not a lot, but I think he'll go through more of that next year, to be honest, and go through a full year knowing that even though it was small taste, even the back-to-backs this year, sometimes you could see him slow down, that you got to understand that the conditioning required, the physical, and even though he can't just go from a 22-year-old to a 30-year-old, you know what I mean? We understand there's steps there, but he has to understand why we ask you to use your summer wisely. Korzak, I thought, did a really good job for us, added some pace to our blue line in terms of his ability to move pucks, push the pace, skating ability. Thought he did a really good job. So he'll push for a job next year. I fully anticipate that, depending on what our blue line looks like on October 1st or whatnot in terms of health, etc. I know we got returning guys there that are veterans, but if he can push a guy, that's better for us, right? You said Cormier? Cormier's a little behind where Korzak was. He probably where Corzi was at the start of last year. So if he comes in and in training camp and shows improvement that, hey, I can play in the league and still bring my attributes, but then he'll get a longer look, probably like Corzi did. Now Corzi got in because White Cloud hurt his hand or whatever it was in exhibition, so a door opens, right? So you need a little bit of that. Brisson got better every time he was up. Thought he pursued pucks better, second effort, knowing that in the NHL it's a second effort league. No one just gives you anything. You got to go get it and get it and get it. So I like that growth in his game. The man strength will be important for him to use this summer to add another year onto his frame, and that part of the game where you're competing against men. If you're an offensive guy, you're going to have to get inside. I'd like to see him find a way to use his shot better. How he does that is knowing the league a little bit, knowing who he's playing with, how to get it off quicker, and that's just a little bit of experience, I think, over time, like Pav did this year. So those are the four. Anybody? Did I miss? So that's where I see them. We want to infuse some youth in our lineup if they're ready, but we're not putting them in if they're not ready. That's kind of their call. And I think every good organization, that's how it happens. You push guys, and it opens the door for, like I thought Pav did a good job with that this year, and we had tough decisions to make. Now we end up having injuries, so you end up using more and more guys from Henderson, but the more you can push guys, the stronger your organization is, because now you have other assets that maybe you can use to improve other areas of your team. So.
Bruce said looking forward, looking ahead to September and October, is there one area that you think this team underperformed this year? And is there an issue about team speed and age that you feel is an issue for moving ahead?
Underperformed. Well, we expected to be a first-place team, so you could say that. Well, why weren't we? Well, I think I've said this many times this year. The guys that could make an impact in a close game were not in the lineup a lot, so there's a bit of just bad injury luck again. So I would hope next year we find a way to stay healthier. I don't have an automatic answer to how to do that. Some of it's luck, some of it is maybe training, some of it's a shorter summer last year, worked against guys to get where they needed to be. Team speed, that's a good question. I think we always consider ourselves a big, heavy team, so there's going to be something's got to give. We'd like to have everybody be big, strong, and fast. So maybe take that one to Krim. But the reality is, every team would like that. So yes, we're always building towards that, and we feel that, we are that team and we're that team. So if we were healthy, I think we would have been that team again. I really do. So it's not an excuse. You ask me a question, I feel like if we were healthy, we'd be big, strong, and fast, with the lineup we have. So next year we have the opportunity to start like that. Now, there's going to be some roster additions, subtractions like every other year, but I think in general we can be that. Aging, you can't help aging. You can examine your roster and try to get away from it by adding certain people. I think we added Noah Hannafin, who's a young, fast defenseman, so we did a great job with that one into our lineup. At what expense? It's going to come at somebody's expense. And, this year in the immediate term, you could say, well, it was Marty's, but, that's just this circle of life in hockey a little bit. Marty played, almost every game for us in the playoffs and played well, so he's still in there. So it's not always automatically that way. Hurdle's a big, strong guy. I think his pace will be better next year when he comes back fully healthy, ready to go with a full training camp playing with our guys. So I'm not concerned there. Mark Stone's had 3 tough injuries now. How is that going to affect him? I don't have an answer to that. Mark was never the fastest guy. He was one of the smartest and best hands. So that's the good news for Mark. It's not taken away from something that he always relied on. He relied on his guile and anticipation and hockey IQ and good hands and competitiveness. So I think we'll be okay there, but he's had 3 injuries, and only he can answer that. But I think the time off this summer will help him a lot. So that's the bit of the blessing in disguise when you're out now, is they get some time to recover. And I think there's some, you can see by our injury list this year, there are guys that will benefit from that. So that is probably the only positive of losing out early, is those guys have more time to rest and recover.
Bruce, you've been through the cycle, before as a coach, autopsy of the season, what went wrong, try to turn the page, move on to the next season. Does it make it easier, that process, knowing you have the cup, that you won the cup, that you have it? Or is it more difficult now knowing, now do you know what you're missing out on not having won the cup?
No, I think it makes it, what it takes, right? The ingredients, I think, are a little clearer when you do win, especially this team, because it's 1 year ago. So, and there's a lot of that group back, so they understand. The interesting is when you win a cup, everyone says, well, now you know what it takes. You know what you go through. Sometimes that psychologically, you also know going into the playoffs, oh boy, this is 2 months, and so it can work against you if you're not in the right mind frame too, right? There's a little bit of that when your body's beat up a little bit, and that's an individual thing, right? And you got to make that commitment. So there's the flip side of both of those things. But talking about going forward, we know what it looked like for us, and we'd like to replicate that because we feel it's the right formula. Now, if we sit down in a month and say, hey, we have to completely change things, it's not the right formula, then we got to go that direction. But I don't believe that's the case. I think how we play the game, our makeup of our team is a good formula. We just got to tweak a few things, and we have to get better in, we'll go, there was a question, was there, well, where we fell short? Well, that's on me to make sure we go through that. We won last year, and we felt there's areas we had to get better on, so it's not like you're never going to go through that either. Like, there's always areas you can improve. So, and we'll go through that. But I believe in our formula, and our formula was one goal away from advancing to the, to the final 8. So we just had to play it better. I think that's where we had to be better in a few, little areas of the game to advance. And our game would have matched up well against Colorado. I believe that. But we'll never know because we didn't get it done.